So next I have the honor to welcome President Tarja Halonen to give her speech about sexual and reproductive health and rights and sustainable development, which way forward after 2015. President Halonen has been the global promoter of sustainable development for decades, all her life in fact. President Halonen has co-chaired the high-level panel for sustainable development appointed by the United Nations Secretary-General, which created the Future We Want report that provides a vision for the future developing paradigm prior to the Rio Plus 20 meeting. President Halonen has also chaired the Delhi Sustainable Development Summit for several years, which gathers public, private and NGOs together to learn and discuss how we jointly can create a sustainable future for today and tomorrow's generations, just like the things that we are trying to do today together also. I'm also glad to tell you that she is the patron of WWF Finland and has helped us a lot in the work, for instance in Nepal and in Himalayas area. President Tarja Halonen, welcome.
Mulla on sitten mun puhe sulle. Okei, mä ootte kaikkikin kuulla. Mulla on se puheenkopio sulle putsaamaton. So, dear friends from Nepal, from Finland, from everywhere. So it's really, I'm delighted to be here with you. I say always for the beginning that when I hear that how they tell what I have done, that it's a good reason to remind you that the population of the world is also aging. Because the only way to live longer is to getting old, day by day. But the fact that we are speaking today also tells that when we are at the same time trying also to monitor the population with family planning and all that, so the successful result is that you will have in the future more and more old people. In old times, it was very, very seldom when people could reach such kind of the high age. For instance, what I have now, I'm almost already 70 years old. And that's why it's, let's be happy that we have succeeded and let's not make it as a problem. So anyway, what I want to start is that today the world is experiencing unprecedented prosperity. Really, we are richer than ever as an humankind. But while the planet is under the also unprecedented pressure, it's really a great big pressure. And inequality between the rich and poor of the world is still growing. More than 1 billion people still live in very hard poverty. And inequality exists not only between the countries, but also within the countries. So when we speak about the sustainable development, and we remember the Rio when we say that we put people in focus. That's the people who have the responsibility of this planet. But then also we have to remember that people's opportunity to influence their future, claim their rights and voice their concerns, it's the part of the sustainable development. And it is also the part of the human well-being. It's also about an economy which serves people's need by respecting long-term sustainability instead of prevailing short-termism. And at the same time, respecting the planetary boundaries. So the story of the sustainable development is a good example how an excellent concept by itself does not lead to progress without a strong commitment by all necessary actors to right policies and actions. So I always respect what Gro Harlem Brundtland, the former Prime Minister and the former Director of the former Prime Minister of Norway and also the Director of the World Health Organization, how clever she and her friends were when they already more than 20 years ago decided about this very good paradigm. But we have had difficulties to implement it. And I think that that's still our challenge for the future. So we know now more about what is the situation of the planet, thanks for the cooperation with scientists. And that's why we have even higher, stronger responsibility that we should do what we know that we should do. And if we continue business as usual, it will risk our planet, but also with the planet, ourselves and the future generations. So I spoke in Rio about the modern trinity, but I now see that we should speak about the modern quartet. So it's, of course, always trying to find a good slogans. But why I said that it's a modern trinity, it's many of you know what means the trinity. But the modern trinity is really that we welcome, we see the necessity of the economic growth, but not economic growth whatsoever. We know that economic growth as such can be an empty bucket. If it doesn't contain the social justice, it means especially the jobs, the good, decent jobs. What ILO, for instance, have been spoken already a long time, and I remember it very well. I have been involved in this work too. So what we also see that it's very important what the governments do. We are still missing, of course, that we would love to have a global agreements which could be the legally also binding. But the possibility to get those is not better than earlier. So we know that we have to take these governments with us, but we know also that it's not only afterwards. We should see the mainstream economic policy debate and practice and put it there, these ideas. Because afterwards, it's like on health. It's better to prevent than try to cure afterwards. So the governance practices and institutions must be improved, but also the business community itself. It has been already mentioned twice this morning that this is a complicated task, but it's possible. And so I think that government, civil society, private sector, local communities, regional bodies, and United Nations organizations, secretariats, everyone is needed. And this is not just a slogan. We really see it in practice that that's the way. And these processes will merge into a one global post-2015 agenda, and that could and it should guide international cooperation for years to come. So an issue that should not be neglected in the post-2015 framework is sexual and reproductive health and rights. It's so exciting, so sensitive, so difficult, and in the matter of fact, so basic issue. The sexual identity and sexual and reproductive rights are the core issue of our human rights. That's what we are. And Finland, as well as the other Nordic countries, has found that greater freedom in matters of sexuality, relationships and reproduction contribute to well-functioning society where everyone wins. So it's nothing to be afraid of. That's why, for instance, we have made also in UN, in such kind of the books, what we tell that how was the world before in our countries and how now how we see it today. Why I take the Nordic countries so much, it's because it's part of my own experience. And I can do it also with the full reason because Nordic countries, they are among the top 10 listed in the World Happiness Report 2013, but also in others case. You can see that that's really some kind of the evidence that it's worth of trying. So, yet we also know that the women's capacities are not fully used in much of the world. When women are empowered, they enrich the world. The increase in female employment in industrialized countries, for example, has been the main driving force of the global growth in the past couple of decades. It has been contributing more than global GDP growth than either new technologies or China or India, according to The Economist. And you can see it also in internet. So we need policies to enable more women to join the workforce. We also need to encourage men to take more responsibility at home. It will be the richer life to take more responsibility at home. I'm just trying to watch the closest young man here in the first row. So I think that it can help everybody's life to make it happier. And we have seen that the future and the present for the matter depends on ensuring that especially young people are empowered to fulfill their potential. That's also the reason. Yeah, they are also the young ones there behind, but I see mainly the first row. And so we have seen fast-growing countries in Asia that invested in their young people that makes a very significant demographic divide. And we have seen the waste of the misdirection of the human capacity in the countries with limited investments and options for the young people. I take one example. Anybody from Jordan? No. So I have been in Jordan for the reasons of the elections in last January. And then I learned more about the country. I thought I knew it, but I didn't, of course. And so I noticed that Jordan is among the Middle East countries where the level of education of the women is one of the highest. I think the highest. But if you think that what are the women's possibilities to use the whole capacity, of course they are better wives and mothers when they have gotten higher education, better education, but it's only 14% of the working power labor force are women. And we discussed already why it is like that. And there are many, many small practical and bigger reasons why they cannot do. And everybody knows that the result would be better for the individuals, for the families, and for the society if these women could use the human capital also underline, also outside of the families. So I think that's why when we have seen all these examples, we see that the education of the young people and their employment is crucial for all societies. When I have spoken so much about the Nordic countries already and said that how good is the situation, so all those who have followed this morning the radio, Finnish radio, noticed that just here in the capital area, one of the big cities, Espoo, there was a woman who complained that she would like to come back to the work, but she couldn't get a daycare place for her children. Even we have all this binding legislation, it should be done. So thanks for her and I think his activities and also the publicity what the media showed. Now they have this guaranteed. But this is very much based on implementation. It was as early as 1980s when I was a Minister of Social Welfare when we already made a legislation and we put a lot of effort to guarantee it. So 1 generation ago. And still this morning we heard that the very, very arrogant voice of the Espoo civil servant when he said that, I think it would be better for these kids that they could be at home. So, yeah, could be, yeah, but this is the choice of the family, not of his. Okay. So, and you will face this in all countries. I mean, there is not paradise once when you get it. You have to look after the process all the time, even after 30, 40 years. So, but it's not so bad. I mean, it's all right. You will survive from that. So the importance of getting this kind of agenda right is the reason of the high-level task force for the ICPD. You know, the International Conference on Population and Development. And so this famous Cairo conference was already 20 years ago. I have co-chaired this task force with the former president of Mozambique, Joaquim Cissano, and we have had a lot of good experts with us. We have made already the unanimous report on that, but now we come again to the same question. How is the implementation? And how we succeed now during the 2014 to get all these results with the better implementation program. And if we do that, so we have the better possibilities to get it as a part of the post-2015 agenda. So, few words more about that. Even I think that you are more or less experts, everybody here. So our vision is that the world where all the individuals have equal opportunities and choices to forge their own life aspirations and destinies is that one we want to get. Our approach is based on human rights and rooted in equality, with attention to the most impoverished and marginalized groups of society. We think that it's not enough that the main part of the population have these rights. We think every single citizen of this planet should have it. And to achieve this vision, the task force is committed to 3 pillars that we and so many others around the world know to be fundamental for sustainable development. First, the empowerment of the women and girls and the gender equality. Second, promoting the rights and participation of the young people and of adolescents also. The third, the sexual and reproductive health and rights for all. So we think that these are the basic demands. They are very basic. These issues are the fundamental human rights and freedoms. So to deal with the issue of the human sexuality and gender dynamics, that really requires attention. But the people and the policymakers can feel sometimes uncomfortable themselves to serve this. But I a little bit doubt of that, because I always say that they are sensitive to improve the rights, but it looks so that they are not at all sensitive when you want to regulate or to say that what you should do. So it's very interesting situation. But these are essential in order to get all this human capacity and potential for our common future. So, of course, we know that what happens today is sometimes very, very hard for the individuals. And when we don't get them right, we allow human rights violations and injustices to persist on an enormous scale, with the consequences that affect all of humankind, future generations, and the planet will leave them to inherit. But simply, how to see it then? We should put the sexual and reproductive rights so that people can do their own decisions. These are the most personal and intimate aspects of one's life, one's body, self-expression, sexuality, relationships, health, when, whom, and whether to marry, and when or if to have children. The freedom to make these very personal decisions has enormous far-reaching implications. In effect, the well-being of individuals, but it's also concerning the families, and it's also concerning the communities. I tell one example from the very past in late 1960s. Some of you have known this. I started to work with the sexual and reproductive rights already in the late 1960s, when many of you were not even born. So we thought that was the Suomen Ylioppilaskuntien Liitto, where I was Secretary for Social Welfare and Health, that what the special foundation for the students in health, what they would need. And I try to explain that what we need are the, as we call them, anti-baby pills. And then we said that the students should need also to get more information about the sexuality. And so I always remember that when the honorable members of the parliament said to me that, young lady, you are at the university in order to study, not make sex. Okay. But luckily, the most of the MPs, they understood. And they said that fine, you might need a little bit more money for that. Today, the popularity of such kind of the information is very, very big. And it's also helped that students didn't stop their studies because, of course, they are interested in gender in many ways when they are young ones. So the another thing was more difficult, and that's the question of the sexual orientation and gender identity. There are a lot of fear, or some countries even the political strategy to prevent the other peoples to have their for human rights. But the transformation is taking root in more and more communities and countries, so many are finally able to experience the freedom and to be who they really are. It's a time for the basic freedom to become universally protected. So it's really very interesting to see that how in certain countries it goes quite well, like in USA. In our neighboring country, in Russia, for instance, it's now a very, very sensitive issue. But at the same time, when the family planning is quite all right in Russia, it seems to be difficult in USA to speak about abortion. Of course, we all know that abortion is a very challenging question. Abortion is never an easy option for any woman or men. But for some, it's the only option. And a minimum standard must be that the women and even the adults and girls have timely access to quality, safe abortion services. Where women lack access to safe legal services, the poor ones risk their lives undergoing unsafe procedures. So these are clearly matters of social justice and equity. And in proper legislation, education and information, we can decrease the need of abortion. We can be one of the examples, Finland, in that we have now more babies, we have less abortions, we have the happier people. So you need information. You need the information and education, but also the access to the safe services. But I already said that I'm a good example that we are all aging, if you don't remember to look at the mirror by yourself. So I think that the next very difficult issue in population is really to see aging populations, but also the aging people access, and to speak about the sexual rights and health also concerning the older people. When we have asked, and this is also the UNFPA, when it has been asked that why there are not the statistics concerning over 60 years old. So they are a little bit like that. The sex is not so important. And I have promised that the next time when I see somebody who is in my old age to say that, I said, oh, sorry, have you stopped to be interested in sex? And I think that, no, not me, but the others. So I mean that's concerning, for instance, the care of the elderly people, and to see that whether these really have even the same rights like in our country, like the prison, in the prisons they have. I said that when have you met the old age or the senior citizens home where you have the meeting place for the family meetings, as they call it, concerning the jails. That's it. So in the post-2015 agenda, emphasis should be placed, of course, on women and young people who do, after all, represent the largest demographic groups in the world facing the inequalities. And they are the key for our sustainable future. But get there must be the control of their own sexual and reproductive rights, and to be able to make free, informed choices. Now, last but not least, I will say that what we think that would be the way past 2015. First, always when you speak with the politicians, tell that these investments are smart, they are effective, and they are cost-saving. Very many people, they close their ears when you start speaking about human rights. But tell, as I say, about the empowerment of the women. It's a great importance in GDP, but tell also that the investment in sexual and reproductive rights is a very smart, effective, and cost-saving investment. So that's a smart economics. And I guess so that post-2015 we will have the main task is eradicating the extreme poverty. We have succeeded with halving it, but I think that we will continue on that. And then fostering inclusive economic growth, it will be the very important part. And for that, and for the human rights, of course, we need an advancing gender equality and preventing violence against women and girls. Then, because of that, we have improved education. The primary education should be the quality education, but also to put interest in secondary education. So then when we speak about the health, reducing maternal and child mortality, and of course the HIV is still important. We should increase the labor productivity, and we should strengthen human capital accumulation. But we should also see this interlinked issues of the democracy, so that we should see all individuals, and we should relieving population pressures on precious resources and fragile ecosystems. So our task force, alongside with the women's movement and many others, is strongly calling the stand-alone goal on women's rights and gender equality in the post-2015 framework. We are not underestimating men. We will say always that with empowering the women, you don't decrease the possibilities of men more generally, but we will say that the competition in some areas might be a bit harder, but it's good for everybody. So the smart men will manage quite well, and you are, of course, all. So then the question of the adolescents and the youth, they are now representing, you are representing 44% of humanity, and then you should have this role also in the post-2015 development agenda, but also there I put a special interest concerning the girls. So sustainable development goals should galvanize the action and complement the MDGs when the time span will end in 2015. And I believe that SDGs will be a form of the social contract. And one practical thing more for the UNFPA is that don't put a 15 years plan. Put it 3 times 5 years. Otherwise, you will be just happy 5 years that you have made this post-2015 panel. It should be, since the beginning, a very hard implementation process. And so I do hope so that this kind of the cooperation, what you have today, will continue. I have a good cooperation with both of these organizations, and I really see that that's very important in all levels, in all sectors, and you have to use just your imagination how to find the partners. Together, we are stronger. That's really true. Thank you.
Okay, President Halonen, thank you so much for your speech and thoughts and ideas for us. So now we have time for one or two questions from the audience.
Be careful if you try to touch your hair. I will say yes. Okay, have you anything to ask? There's a young lady who made that. Okay. Okay, there, good.
Thank you very much, Mrs. President. I like your presentation. It's my first time to listen to you directly. My name is Muhammad, originally from Sudan. I work for the University of Helsinki. I'm a docent. I have been here for more than 20 years. My question related to goes directly to the implementation. If we look to the at global level, we have so many of those, like in 2000 Millennium Development Goals, which to some extent incorporate what you have said now, especially like gender equality and those kind of things. So what is your opinion? What hampered the implementation of, and what is the synergy between those goals that we could achieve really something practical? My understanding is that within these 15 years of implementation, is very little has been done, despite the binding agreement. Even if you go further for these multilateral environmental agreements, very little has been achieved. So what really we should have to make that to make things like really to have some real practical things on the ground. Thank you very much, and I'm really glad to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is very important. You might say that my answer is too philosophical when I say that the biggest obstacle today to reach these goals is the lacking confidence. What I have seen during last 20 years, for instance, it seems to be more than 25 years. What I think that is very sad, that in the middle of the 1990s, quite many good legally binding global agreements was possible to do. We have discussed here mainly about Cairo conference. Also the Beijing was made that. Also the environmental ideas came very strongly on that. Also the critics concerning the too free globalization, but was not the with the social justice. But then what has happened? I think that you can mention all this kind of the, how could I say, we call them asymmetric armed conflicts, which means that everybody feels themselves unsure. It's not just the issue of the big wars, but it's a question of such kind of society where you can be attacked by different kind of groups of people. But that has also spread, so that every day we listen more about spying and doing, even with among those who call themselves partners. And I think that this kind of the lacking confidence is one of the reasons. And for instance, from Africa, there are many countries where nobody trusts another person. I have worked with the refugees from Chile in the 1970s, and it was a big miracle for the families that they could ask police to come and help them. That it was not a cause to be worried if the police at the door, but it was a friend. But that goes all the time in all countries in every way. And that's why I said the basic issue is to build confidence in all societies. Sometimes you cannot start from the top. You have to start with the smaller circles. But that's why always when you work with somebody, try to work in such a way that this person will find the reason to have a confidence, at least with you or with somebody else, then to make a bigger circus of the confidence. And when we cannot now think that we will get a legally binding future, in the future the legally binding global agreements, which then could be like a good rain coming down. We have to think that we have to do it also another way around. And I always say that people get as good parliaments and governments what they deserve. It's quite cruel. But politicians in democratic societies, they are based on their popularity, what the people show to them, and the better you do it, the more you demand, and you will get also the better political representatives. And that might goes back to the better international agreements. But if we don't get the global agreements, we can get the program, I think, post-2015. It will not be, I guess so, the legally binding. But if we make it as a key of the moral, so we can use it also at the lower level, the regional, for instance, the African Union or European Union or the whatever you would call them. And then you can also try to praise those who are the pilot countries. And for instance, concerning the Sudan, to tell that so fantastic empowerment of the women, and to tell it's not only for those who have had the right in the past, but let's take any good examples. And this is a little bit the same what I always say at the school, that remember to thank those who have done their tasks, and don't concentrate only for those who make a noise. So that's the same with the adults. And so that's, I think, is the one. And the second answer is that I think that, have you ever played a basketball or so? Basketball or baseball or whatever. It's enough, or the football. You know, it's enough if you have one ball It's quite tricky to do, and that's the same if you are doing like that. But if you have 2, it's very difficult, more difficult. If you have 3 or 4, it's even more difficult. And this is now with this modern trinity or the modern quartet. It's enough work for the most of the politicians that they see what is the economic growth. It's enough if in Porto Alegre people see that what is the social justice. It's enough if they see in for instance in Rio what is an environmental situation. But we have to keep all these 3 dimensions or even the culture in our mind all the time and be ready to scale what has happened. I have said to our government that when you have worked very much with index, which is a very fine idea, that how to measure the development, why don't you show it also to the parliament what is your sustainable development index in your next budget? No answer. Okay.
Thank you so much. And